The morning had started the way all her morning started at University Medical Center, with Maya Thompson being reminded that she didn't belong. Coffee run, Thompson. Angela Martinez didn't look up from her phone, just gestured vaguely toward the nurse's lounge. 2 sugars, extra cream. And grab one for Dr. Lewis too. Black, no sugar. He likes his delivered before rounds. It was 6:47 a.m. Maya had arrived at 6:30, already changed into her scrubs, already reviewed the overnight charts, already identified which patients would likely code before noon based on their vitals trending. But Angela didn't need to know that. Of course, Maya said, her voice neutral as always. By 7:15, she delivered the coffees, restocked 3 crash carts, and updated the whiteboard with patient statuses Angela had forgotten to log. When Lewis arrived at 7:30 for morning rounds, he walked past Maya as if she were part of the furniture. "Angela, walk with me," he said, his white coat billowing behind him like a cape. "I want to discuss the weekend admissions. Some concerning decision-making in my absence." Angela shot Maya a glance that might have been apologetic in a different person. "Thompson, honey, why don't you practice your vitals checks on the patients in the observation unit? The stable ones. I'll quiz you later on proper documentation." Maya had documented approximately 400 combat casualties under conditions Angela couldn't imagine. She nodded. "Yes, ma'am. The observation unit was where they kept the patients too sick to discharge but not sick enough to admit, chest pain ruled out, minor head injuries under monitoring, diabetics waiting for their glucose to stabilize." Maya moved through them efficiently, her assessments thorough and silent. A construction worker with stable angina. A teenager concussed from a skateboarding accident. An elderly woman with a UTI awaiting bed placement. She checked the teenager's pupillary response and found it sluggish. His vitals showed a slight increase in blood pressure since the last check, subtle, but there. Possible intracranial bleed expanding. She pulled out her phone to text Angela, then caught herself. Protocol said to inform the charge nurse immediately for any status changes. She found Angela at the nurse's station, laughing at something Jeremy had said. "Angela, the head injury in observation 2. His pupils are becoming unequal and his pressure's climbing. He might need a repeat CT." Angela's smile faded into annoyance. "Thompson, I literally just reviewed his chart 30 minutes ago. He's fine. You're being overly cautious. That's the problem with nursing home nurses, you panic over everything because you're not used to real acute care." Jeremy smirked. "Maybe let the professionals handle the assessments, yeah." Maya felt the familiar sensation of swallowing words. The same way she'd swallowed screams when the medevac was 30 minutes out and the Marine in front of her had a femoral bleed she couldn't stop. She'd learned silence in places these people would never understand. "Understood," she said quietly. Lewis emerged from Trauma Bay 1, stripping off gloves from a minor laceration repair. "Angela, I need someone to clean Bay 3 before the next ambulance. It's a disaster." Angela turned to Maya with that same performative sympathy. "Thompson, that's perfect for you. Good practice on infection control protocols. And take your time, really make sure it's spotless. That's how you build good habits." Maya Thompson, who had sterilized field surgical equipment using nothing but bottled water and prayer, picked up the cleaning supplies and walked toward Bay 3 without a word. Invisible. Underestimated. Exactly where she needed to be. For now. The trauma phone rang at 2:51 p.m., and Maya knew from the pitch of the alert that this wasn't a car accident or a fall from a ladder. This was the sound they reserved for tactical casualties, the ones that came in hot with police escorts and radios crackling with encrypted channels. Angela grabbed the phone, her expression shifting from annoyed to focused in a heartbeat. "Copy that. ETA 4 minutes. GSW to the chest and abdomen, massive hemorrhage, BP dropping. They're saying Wait, they're saying what? Maya was already moving toward Trauma Bay 1, the best equipped room, before Angela even hung up. Old instincts rising like muscle memory. Thompson, I didn't tell you to. Angela stopped mid-sentence as the sirens crescendoed outside, closer than they should be, faster than protocol usually allowed. Fine. You can observe. From the corner. Don't touch anything. Dr. Lewis emerged from his office, straightening his white coat. What's the status? Military casualty, Angela said, her voice tight. Special operations team en route. Multiple penetrating traumas. They're requesting our best trauma surgeon. Lewis preened slightly. Well, they've got him. Let's show these boys what real civilian medicine looks like. Thompson, you're going to see how we handle real trauma. Pay attention. Maya positioned herself in the corner of Trauma Bay 1, her hands loose at her sides, her breathing controlled. Through the ambulance bay windows, she could see 3 black SUVs screaming into the parking lot, their formation tactical and precise. Not standard EMT protocol. Not even close. The doors burst open and 6 men in tactical gear flooded into the ER, moving like a single organism around the gurney they flanked. The patient, covered in blood-soaked bandages, his tactical vest still partially attached, was ghost pale, his breathing shallow and rapid. But it was his face that made Maya's breath catch for just a fraction of a second. Commander Tony Walker. She'd never served directly under him, but she knew his file the way everyone in JSOC knew his file. 3 bronze stars. A silver star. More classified operations than most operators saw in a lifetime. And now he was bleeding out on a gurney in a second-rate civilian hospital because someone had decided he was too dangerous to live. Trauma Bay 1, let's go. The lead medic, military, she could tell from the way he moved, locked eyes with Lewis. Multiple GSWs, chest and abdomen. He's lost at least 3 liters. We've got pressure on the bleeds but he needs surgery now. Lewis stepped forward, his confidence visible in every movement. He pulled on gloves, positioned himself at the head of the gurney, and looked down at Tony's wounds. Then he froze. Maya saw it happen in real time, the color draining from Lewis's face as he took in the true extent of the damage. This wasn't a single gunshot from a domestic dispute. This was battlefield trauma. Multiple entry wounds, shrapnel patterns, the kind of catastrophic damage that came from someone trying very hard to make sure their target didn't survive. We need to. Lewis's hands hovered over Tony's chest, uncertain. Angela, get me we need to stabilize the. His voice trailed off. Around the trauma bay, the nurses exchanged glances. Jeremy stood frozen by the supply cart. The military medic's expression hardened. Doc, we don't have time for. Tension pneumothorax, left side, Maya said quietly from her corner. And he's bleeding into his abdomen. You've got maybe 2 minutes before he arrests. Every head in the room turned to look at her. Lewis's face flushed red. Thompson, I told you to observe, not. Tony's monitor flatlined. And Maya stopped being invisible. Maya was moving before the alarm finished its first cycle, her body responding to training so deeply embedded it bypassed conscious thought. 3 strides across the trauma bay, shouldering past Jeremy who stood frozen with a bag of 4 fluids in his hands. Thompson, stay back. Lewis's voice was sharp with panic and authority in equal measure. You are not authorized to. She ignored him completely. Her hands found Tony's chest, fingers pressing into the spaces between his ribs on the left side. The tissue gave wrong, too much air where there should be resistance. Tension pneumothorax, just as she'd called it. His collapsed lung was pushing his heart to the right side of his chest cavity, cutting off blood flow. Textbook battlefield casualty. I need a 14-gauge needle, now, Maya said, her voice level and commanding in a way no one in this hospital had ever heard from her. Not a request. An order. Angela hesitated, looking to Louis for guidance. The military medic didn't. He slapped a needle decompression kit into Maya's palm without a word, his expression shifting from alarm to recognition. Thompson, I'm ordering you to step away from that patient. Louis's face was scarlet now, but his feet stayed planted where they were. He didn't move to stop her. Maya counted ribs with her left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And found the intercostal space at the midclavicular line. The needle went in at a 90-degree angle, smooth and controlled, the same motion she'd performed 23 times in combat. Muscle memory written in blood and sand. The hiss of escaping air was immediate and unmistakable. Tony's monitor hiccuped, caught, and found rhythm again. Weak, but present. Chest tube kit, Maya said to the military medic, who was already pulling one from his go bag. Not standard civilian equipment. They'd known this might happen. And I need 2 units of O-negative running wide open. Someone call the OR and tell them we're coming up in 3 minutes with a GSW to the chest and probable splenic rupture. Her hands moved across Tony's abdomen, palpating quadrants with the efficiency of someone who performed triage under mortar fire. Rigid. Distended. Bleeding internally, probably from the spleen or liver. Maybe both. You can't possibly know that from a physical exam, Jeremy said, finding his voice finally. You need imaging, labs. He'll be dead before the CT finishes, Maya cut him off, her hands already prepping for the chest tube insertion. Angela, call the OR. Now. Angela's eyes were wide, but she grabbed the phone. Louis finally found his authority again, stepping forward with his hands raised. Everyone stop. I don't know what you think you're doing, Thompson, but you just assaulted a patient against direct orders from the attending physician. Security. The military medic stepped between Louis and Maya, his body language making it clear he was prepared to enforce that barrier physically if necessary. Doc, respectfully, that nurse just saved the commander's life. If you want to file paperwork later, be my guest. But right now, she's the only person in this room who knows what she's doing. Maya threaded the chest tube between Tony's ribs, her movements precise and unhurried despite the chaos erupting around her. Blood and air drained into the collection chamber. His oxygen saturation climbed from 72 to 88 to 93. Pressure's coming up, Angela said quietly, watching the monitor. 90/60. 95/62. Tony's eyes fluttered open for just a moment, unfocused and glazed with pain. But alive. Maya stepped back from the gurney, her white uniform now soaked with blood, her hands finally still at her sides. Around her, the trauma bay was silent except for the steady beep of monitors and Tony's labored breathing. Louis's expression had moved past anger into something colder. More dangerous. Get her out of my ER, he said quietly. Security. Now. The hospital administration office smelled like stale coffee and the particular brand of cowardice that came with middle management. Maya sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair across from Director Patricia Huang's desk, her blood-soaked scrub still damp against her skin, and listened to Dr. Louis destroy what remained of her carefully constructed normal life. Reckless endangerment of a patient, Louis said, pacing behind Huang's desk like a prosecutor at trial. Performing procedures without authorization. Directly violating orders from the attending physician. Assaulting a patient, and let's be clear, that's what it was, assault, while security footage will show I explicitly told her to stand down. Huang's expression was professionally neutral, but Maya could read the calculation behind her eyes. This wasn't about medicine. This was about liability, lawsuits, and which employee was easier to replace. Dar. Louis, the patient's vitals did stabilize after Nurse Thompson's intervention, Huang said carefully. The military personnel on scene seemed to indicate. The military personnel are not medical professionals qualified to assess civilian hospital protocols, Louis interrupted smoothly. What matters is that a subordinate nurse, with zero trauma experience beyond what I can only assume was minimal nursing home work, decided her judgment superseded mine. The patient could have died. Maya almost laughed at that. Tony Walker had died, clinically, for 18 seconds. Lewis had stood there with his hands hovering uselessly while a decorated commander bled out. But she kept her face impassive, her hands folded in her lap, and said nothing. Because silence was what they expected from her. Silence was what made this easier. Thompson, do you have anything to say in your defense? Huang asked, her tone suggesting she hoped the answer was no. Maya met her eyes. The patient is alive. The patient is alive despite your unauthorized intervention, Lewis corrected, his voice rising slightly. You had no way of knowing that needle decompression was indicated without imaging. You could have punctured his heart, his major vessels. You performed a procedure that requires years of specialized training based on nothing but arrogance and some misguided hero complex. Years of specialized training. Maya had performed her first needle decompression at 22 years old in a bombed-out building in Ramadi while the walls shook from incoming fire. She'd done 23 more after that. Her success rate was 100%, because in her world, failure meant carrying a flag-draped coffin. But she didn't say that. Couldn't say that. Because the moment she revealed who she really was, this became a different kind of story. One where wounded warriors made headlines and small-town hospitals got investigated and Maya's carefully maintained anonymity shattered like glass. I understand, she said quietly. Lewis turned to Huang with the expression of a man who'd already won. I want her termination processed immediately. Today. I want her escorted from the building, and I want a formal incident report filed with the State Nursing Board. Her license should be reviewed. Huang folded her hands on her desk. Dar. Lewis, that seems. Patricia, if this hospital wants to maintain its trauma center certification, we cannot have nurses freelancing life and death decisions. What happens next time when she decides to override protocol and the patient dies? We'll be liable. You'll be liable. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. This is a personnel issue that solves itself. She's been here 3 weeks. No tenure, no union protection. Make the problem go away. Huang's expression shifted. The calculation complete. Ms. Thompson, I'm going to have to ask you to surrender your badge and leave the premises. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Your final paycheck will be mailed. Maya stood slowly. Through the office window, she could see the ER where Tony Walker was being prepped for emergency surgery. Alive. Breathing. Saved. Understood, she said. And walked toward the door without looking back. The security guard's hand hovered near Maya's elbow without quite touching her, a gesture that managed to be both deferential and degrading. His nameplate read Marcus Chen, and his expression suggested he'd done this walk before, escorting terminated employees through the gauntlet of their former workplace. This way, ma'am, he said quietly, almost apologetically. The path from administration to the ER staff locker room required walking through the main lobby, past the nurses' station, through the break room where the day shift gathered between traumas. There was no discreet exit, no back hallway. This was designed to be seen. A warning to others about the cost of stepping out of line. Maya kept her eyes forward and her breathing steady. The blood on her scrubs had dried to a dark rust color, stark against the white fabric. Her hands, scrubbed clean but still faintly stained, hung loose at her sides. The whispers started before she reached the nurse's station. Is that Thompson? Someone said, not quite quietly enough. Oh my God, what did she do? Angela stood near the medication dispensary, her arms crossed, her expression a complicated mixture of vindication and something that might have been guilt in a different person. When Maya passed, she didn't look away. I tried to warn her, Angela said to the cluster of nurses around her, her voice carrying Some people just can't handle real emergency medicine. They panic, they make dangerous choices. It's better this way, honestly. Before someone got hurt. Jeremy leaned against the wall near Trauma Bay 2, his smirk visible even from a distance. Nursing home hero, he muttered to a resident beside him. Thought she could play doctor. The resident laughed. Maya's footsteps echoed against the linoleum. Chen walked a half-step behind her, his presence marking her as someone who'd lost the right to move freely through this building. Around them, the normal chaos of the ER continued, monitors beeping, phones ringing, overhead pages calling for lab results and X-ray techs. But everyone who saw her stopped what they were doing, just for a moment, to watch the spectacle. A patient in the waiting room, an elderly man with his arm in a makeshift sling, met Maya's eyes as she passed. He nodded once, a small gesture of respect that felt jarring against the backdrop of whispers and sneers. She nodded back, a fractional movement. The locker room was mercifully empty. Chen waited by the door while Maya opened her locker with the key she'd been issued 3 weeks ago. Inside. A spare pair of scrubs, her car keys, a protein bar she'd forgotten to eat, and a small framed photo of her team, 8 faces grinning at the camera somewhere outside Kandahar, all of them alive in that frozen moment, before the ambush that took 3 of them. She took the photo, the keys, and left the rest. That's everything? Chen asked. That's everything. The walk back through the lobby was longer somehow, the whispers louder. Maya caught fragments as she passed. Heard she tried to perform surgery without. Completely unqualified. Probably lying about her credentials. Near the main entrance, Dr. Lewis stood talking with a pharmaceutical rep, his body language relaxed and confident. He glanced up as Maya approached, and for just a second, their eyes met. His expression was triumph, pure and uncomplicated. He'd won. The hierarchy had been restored. The upstart had been reminded of her place. Maya held his gaze for 1 breath, 2, then looked away first. Let him think he'd broken her. Let him think he'd won. The automatic doors slid open, and afternoon sunlight hit her face like a physical force. Behind her, University Medical Center continued its normal operations, traumas arriving, patients being treated, doctors maintaining their kingdoms. Chen stopped at the threshold. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what it's worth. Maya almost smiled. It's worth something. She walked toward her car in the employee lot, her blood-stained scrubs marking her as someone who tried and failed. Around her, the city moved on, indifferent to small tragedies in hospital corridors. She made it to her driver's seat before her hands started shaking. Maya sat in her car for 17 minutes, her hands gripping the steering wheel until the shaking stopped and her breathing returned to something resembling normal. Through the windshield, she could see the hospital's main entrance, the steady flow of ambulances and visitors and staff moving through their routines like blood through arteries. She should leave. Should start the engine and drive away from University Medical Center and never look back. Should go home to her studio apartment with its bare walls and second-hand furniture and figure out what came next for someone who couldn't stop saving lives even when it cost her everything. But something made her pause. Some instinct honed in places where hesitation meant death. Through the parking lot, 6 men in tactical casual, jeans and boots and jackets that didn't quite conceal the bulk of body armor underneath. Moved toward the hospital entrance with the coordinated efficiency of a unit that had trained together for years. Tony's team. Coming to check on their commander, probably. Coming to find out if the civilian hospital had managed to keep him alive. Maya watched them disappear through the automatic doors. She should go. Should let them have their moment with their brother in arms without the complication of the fired nurse who'd saved his life. But her hand stayed on the key in the ignition, unturning. Inside the lobby, visible through the large glass windows, the SEAL team had stopped at the information desk. The receptionist pointed toward the surgical wing, her gestures animated. One of the men, the team leader from earlier with the medic training, nodded his thanks. They turned toward the elevators. And then they saw her. Maya wasn't even sure how it happened. She was sitting in her car 50 yards away, just another employee in the parking lot. But the team leader's head turned, his gaze sweeping across the lot with the automatic threat assessment of someone who'd survived too many ambushes. His eyes found her Honda Civic, found her blood-stained white scrubs visible through the windshield. Found her face. He stopped walking. His hand came up in a gesture that halted his entire team mid-stride. 5 men froze as if they'd hit an invisible wall. For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The team leader's expression shifted through surprise, recognition, and something that looked like understanding. Then he said something to his team, too far away for Maya to hear through the glass and distance, and all 6 men turned to face the parking lot. To face her. The team leader's hand came up slowly, deliberately. Not a wave. Not a greeting. A salute. Sharp, formal, held with the kind of precision that spoke of parade grounds and flag ceremonies and respect earned in blood. Behind him, 5 more hands rose in perfect synchronization. 6 warriors standing in a civilian hospital lobby, saluting a woman in blood-stained scrubs sitting alone in a parking lot. Maya's breath caught in her chest. Her hands released the steering wheel. For just a moment, she considered pretending she hadn't seen, starting her car, driving away from this complication before it became something she couldn't control. But some debts couldn't be ignored. Some moments demanded acknowledgement. She opened her car door and stood slowly, her movements deliberate. Across the distance, 6 men held their salutes, unwavering. Around them, the lobby had gone quiet, visitors and staff stopping to watch this strange tableau, this moment of military protocol interrupting civilian routine. Maya's right hand rose to her temple. Sharp. Precise. The salute she'd given 1,000 times to officers and flags and fallen brothers. The salute she'd thought she'd left behind when she traded desert camouflage for white scrubs. The salute that marked her as something other than the invisible, incompetent nurse Thompson everyone thought they knew. The team leader held her gaze across the parking lot, his salute unwavering. Then he lowered his hand and said something else to his team. All 6 men turned and walked back through the hospital entrance, moving with purpose now, their destination changed. They were coming for her. Maya stood beside her open car door, her hand slowly lowering from her salute, and realized that her carefully constructed invisibility had just shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The SEAL team reached Maya before she could decide whether to run or stay. The team leader, his name tape read, Garrett, stopped 3 feet away, maintaining the respectful distance of someone who understood boundaries and protocol. Petty Officer Thompson, he said quietly. Not a question. A statement of fact. Maya's jaw tightened. I haven't been that person in 2 years. Once a devil doc, always a devil doc, Garrett said, and there was something in his voice that spoke of shared understanding, of brotherhood that transcended discharge papers and civilian clothes. Commander Walker is asking for you. Against medical advice, against the surgeon's orders, and definitely against the wishes of that asshole doctor who tried to let him die. I was fired, Maya said. Security escorted me out 20 minutes ago. Then it's a good thing we're not asking permission. Garrett gestured toward the hospital entrance. He's being prepped for transfer to Walter Reed. Military transport. But he won't leave until he sees you. Says he owes you his life. Maya looked past him toward the hospital, weighing options and consequences. Going back inside meant confrontation, meant questions she'd spent 2 years avoiding. It meant the end of her quiet existence. But Tony Walker was asking for her. A commander who'd survived 3 combat deployments and an assassination attempt. A warrior who understood debts that couldn't be paid with words. Lead the way, she said. The lobby erupted into chaos the moment she walked through the doors flanked by 6 operators. Staff members stopped mid-conversation, visitors stared, and somewhere in the back, Maya heard Angela's sharp intake of breath. The SEAL team moved through the crowd like a tactical formation, and Maya found herself at the center, protected and elevated in ways that made her skin crawl with discomfort. They reached the surgical prep area just as orderlies were wheeling Tony toward the ambulance bay. He looked pale against the white sheets, his chest wrapped in bandages, 4 lines running into both arms. But his eyes were clear and focused, tracking the movement around him with the awareness of someone who'd spent a career in threat assessment. Those eyes found Maya and held. The orderlies stopped the gurney. The hallway, crowded with staff and patients and the normal chaos of a hospital shift change, went suddenly, impossibly quiet. Tony's right hand, the one not restricted by 4 lines, moved slowly from where it rested on his chest. The effort cost him, Maya could see it in the tension around his eyes, the slight tremor in his arm. But he raised that hand to his temple with the precision of someone for whom military bearing was as natural as breathing. A salute. Clear. Unmistakable. Held despite the pain it obviously caused him. Held for her. The silence in the hallway deepened into something almost sacred. Maya heard someone's phone clatter to the floor. Heard the sharp exhale of a nurse who'd been holding her breath. Heard the overhead page system calling for Dr. Lewis to the lobby, Dr. Lewis, who was about to see exactly who he'd fired. Maya's hand rose in response. Not the hesitant gesture of someone unsure of her place, but the crisp salute of a decorated combat medic who'd earned her rank in places these people would never understand. Her eyes never left Tony's. Petty Officer First Class Maya Thompson, Tony said, his voice rough but carrying through the silent hallway. Special Operations Combat Medic. 3 Bronze Stars. Silver Star. 23 combat saves in 18 months of deployment. They do now, Maya said quietly. Dr. Lewis appeared at the edge of the crowd, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and something that might have been fear. Behind him, Director Huang emerged from the administrative wing, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes calculating furiously. Tony's team leader stepped forward, his voice carrying with command authority. Commander Walker is being transferred to Walter Reed under military jurisdiction. Anyone who interfered with his medical care today should probably have their lawyers ready. Lewis's face drained of color. Tony smiled, a small, pained expression that still managed to convey satisfaction. Hell of a day, Thompson. Hell of a day, sir, Maya agreed. And watched her old life burn completely to ash. The first indication something was wrong came from Garrett's radio, a burst of static followed by a terse transmission in tactical shorthand that made every operator in the hallway shift their body language from ceremonial to combat ready in less than a second. Say again, Garrett said into his radio, his voice clipped and professional. His eyes were already scanning the hallway, identifying exits and cover positions. Maya felt it too. The same instinct that had kept her alive through 18 months of deployment, the animal awareness that came from living in places where relaxation meant death. The air pressure in the hallway had changed somehow, the normal chaos of the hospital acquiring an undercurrent of wrongness. Ambulance bay, one of Garrett's men said quietly. 2 vehicles, wrong markings. Drivers not responding to security challenges. Through the windows overlooking the bay, Maya could see it happening in real time. 2 ambulances, newer models, commercial grade, nothing obviously wrong except for the way they'd positioned themselves to block the main exit. The drivers stayed in their seats, faces obscured by the glare of afternoon sun on windshields. Then the back doors opened. 6 men emerged. Not paramedics. Not hospital staff. They moved with the coordinated precision of a tactical unit, their hands reaching under jackets that were too heavy for the weather. One of them glanced up at the windows, and Maya caught the edge of something in his expression, cold assessment, target identification. Breach, Garrett said into his radio. Multiple hostiles, ambulance bay. Commander Walker is still in the building. Lock it down now. The hallway erupted into controlled chaos. Garrett's team formed a protective circle around Tony's gurney, hands moving to concealed weapons. Maya's combat instincts overrode 2 years of civilian conditioning. She was already moving, her mind automatically cataloging defensive positions, escape routes, vulnerable civilians who'd need protection. Get him to the surgical wing, Maya said to Garrett, her voice carrying command authority she hadn't used since her discharge. Interior rooms, no windows. Lock the doors and don't open them for anyone without proper authentication. Garrett didn't question her. Williams, Chen, move the commander. Everyone else, with me. The first gunshot shattered the relative quiet, a sharp crack that sent the civilian staff into immediate panic. Screaming. Running. The kind of chaos that got people killed in active shooter situations. Maya grabbed a young nurse frozen near the medication cart. Listen to me. Get everyone into patient rooms and lock the doors. No heroes, no investigations. Lock the doors. The nurse nodded, pale but functioning, and started herding staff members away from the main corridors. Through the windows, Maya could see the 6 men advancing toward the hospital entrance. They weren't trying for stealth anymore. This was a direct assault, surgical and efficient. Someone had sent professionals to finish what they'd started when they'd put 3 bullets in Tony Walker. And they'd sent them to a hospital full of civilians who had no idea they were in a war zone. Dr. Lewis appeared from behind a nurse's station, his face red with indignation. What is happening? Someone call the police. Get down, Maya said flatly. Excuse me, you can't just. The main entrance windows exploded inward in a spray of glass and automatic weapons fire. Lewis dropped to the floor with a strangled yelp. Around the lobby, civilians scattered like prey animals, their screams mixing with the staccato rhythm of gunfire and the electronic wail of alarm systems triggering. Maya was already moving, her body falling into the tactical patterns burned into her muscle memory. She grabbed a crash cart and shoved it toward the main corridor, creating the first barrier. Grabbed an equipment rack and positioned it to provide cover. Started directing fleeing staff members away from the kill zone and toward the interior rooms where walls were concrete instead of drywall. Garrett materialized beside her, his sidearm drawn, his expression grim. They're coming for the commander. Professional hit squad. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they breach the interior. Maya scanned the ER, the supply closets, the medication dispensaries, the equipment that could be weaponized or used as barriers. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles and defensive positions and how to turn a civilian hospital into something resembling a fortress. Then we give them a war, she said quietly. And the ghost they'd tried to keep buried came fully, irrevocably alive. Maya's hands moved with mechanical precision as she barricaded the ER entrance with a supply cart, her military training overriding the chaos erupting around her. The gunshots had stopped, but the silence felt worse, predatory, waiting. Get away from the windows, she commanded, her voice cutting through the paralyzed fear. Dr. Harrison stood frozen by the nurse's station, his usual condescension replaced by blank shock. Now. She grabbed his arm, pulling him behind the concrete pillar that divided the waiting area from the treatment bays. The others, nurses, residents, even Dr. Chen, scrambled to follow her lead, their earlier contempt forgotten in the face of genuine danger. Lights off, Maya ordered, and someone hit the switches. Emergency lighting bathed everything in sickly green. We need to assess who's injured and get them stable. Silent triage, no unnecessary movement or sound. Lisa crawled toward her, mascara streaking her cheeks. There are people out there. In the waiting room. We have to. We will. Maya's gaze swept the darkened ER, cataloging exits, cover points, potential threats. But if we rush out there without intel, we're dead. All of us. She pointed to Marcus, the charge nurse who'd rolled his eyes at her countless times. You know this building. Secondary exits. Loading dock. 2 floors down. His voice shook but he answered. And the staff stairwell near radiology. Good. Maya pulled out her phone, keeping the screen dimmed. I'm texting hospital security our location and status. Everyone stay low, stay quiet. A moan came from near the automatic doors, a patient who'd been checking in when the shooting started. Maya's jaw tightened. She glanced at Dr. Harrison, who was staring at her like she'd become someone entirely different. I'll get him, she whispered. Cover me. With what? Harrison hissed back. Maya was already moving, using the scattered chairs as cover, her body low and controlled. She'd done this before, different circumstances, different country, but the fear tasted the same. She reached the wounded man, a middle-aged construction worker with a shoulder injury, and began dragging him back toward safety. A shadow moved past the frosted glass of the entrance. Maya froze, one hand on the patient's collar, the other raised in a silent signal to stay down. The shadow paused. Testing. Listening. Then it moved on. She hauled the patient behind the pillar, where Dr. Chen immediately began assessing him with trembling hands. Maya scanned each face in the dim light, her colleagues, her tormentors, now her responsibility. They looked at her differently now, with something that might have been respect, or might have been simply the recognition that she was the only one among them who knew how to survive what came next. The boardroom felt sterile after the chaos, all polished mahogany and leather chairs that didn't remember the smell of fear. Maya sat across from Dr. Patricia Valdez, the hospital's chief administrator, and 2 board members whose names she'd already forgotten. They looked at her like she was a solution to a problem they hadn't known how to solve. Your actions saved 17 lives, Dr. Valdez said, sliding a folder across the table. The board wants to offer you the position of Director of Emergency Preparedness. Full authority over protocol development, crisis training, department oversight. Significant salary increase, of course. Maya opened the folder but didn't read it. Through the window, she could see the ER entrance where yellow tape still fluttered in the autumn wind. Dr. Harrison had shaken her hand that morning, his grip uncertain, apologetic. Lisa had hugged her with tears in her eyes, whispering thank you over and over. It should have felt like vindication. We need someone with your experience, one of the board members added. Someone who understands real crisis management, not just theoretical protocols. Someone who can teach us, Dr. Valdez said quietly. So we're not helpless next time. Maya closed the folder. I appreciate this. Genuinely. But I can't accept. The silence that followed carried weight. May I ask why? Dr. Valdez's expression remained neutral, professional, but something flickered behind her eyes, disappointment, maybe, or understanding. Because I've been trying to make myself fit into a world that doesn't need what I am, Maya said. I thought if I could just be normal enough, quiet enough, civilian enough, I could leave the other part of me behind. She stood, pushing the folder back across the table. But Tuesday night showed me something. I'm good at this. Not at paperwork or politics or playing nice with people who think PTSD is a weakness. I'm good at the moment when everything breaks down and someone has to act. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tony, got approval for the Joint Task Force. Need a second in command. Interested? Maya showed them the screen. My old unit commander is forming an elite medical response team. Natural disasters, conflict zones, mass casualty events. The places where people like me don't have to apologize for being what we are. Dr. Valdez nodded slowly. You're sure? I spent 8 months trying to become someone I'm not. Maya moved toward the door, then paused. Thank you for seeing me differently. But I need to go somewhere I don't have to be seen differently, where what I am is exactly what's needed. Outside, the October sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. Maya pulled out her phone and typed back to Tony, "When do we deploy?" The response came immediately, 2 weeks. "Welcome home, Doc." She smiled. For the first time since her discharge, the word home felt right.